Hey Supercharger, it's a pleasure to be here today and to talk with you in this lesson about one of the hottest trends in design today, and that's dark UI. In the next couple of minutes, I will share with you what makes a good dark UI, alternative ways to create dark UIs, and best practices for designing dark interfaces. Let's start by defining what dark UI is. Dark UI is a user interface design that uses a dark color scheme instead of a light one. It's not only aesthetically pleasing, but it's also functional, as it often reduces eye strain, sometimes makes content more legible, and puts the focus on the content rather than the UI itself. Saving battery life on smartphones is often a good reason too. But what makes a good dark UI? Well, first and foremost, a good dark UI should be readable. The text and other UI elements should be clear and easy to read against the dark background. The contrast should be balanced and the fonts should be chosen carefully. The last thing you want is your users squinting their eyes to read your content. Secondly, a good dark UI should be consistent. The color scheme, typography, and overall design should be cohesive and unified. Consistency ensures that the user's attention is on the content and not the UI. And lastly, a good dark UI should be accessible. Many people with visual impairments find it easier to read white text on a dark background than the other way around. So it's important to keep in mind the accessibility guidelines when you're designing dark user interfaces. Now, let's talk about alternative ways you can use to create dark UIs. One way is to flip the values. It doesn't work good, but it's a starting point. You reverse your light UI and then make adjustments as needed. The most frustrating example for me personally is Gmail, because they do exactly that without many tweaks for their email previews. Trying to hack the newsletter designs to support their awful flipping method, if you ever helped on work one of those, is the definition of pain. CSS is very limited in emails, so you need to work closely with your developers to ensure that the emails you might work on end up looking good on both light and dark Gmail UI. When you're working on dark UIs, it's important to avoid saturated colors. Avoid too many bright colors. Bright colors can be distracting and take away from the content. Saturated colors, which can look great on light surfaces, can visually vibrate against dark ones, making them harder to read. Desaturate primary colors in order to make the contrast big enough against the dark surface. As you already know, colors work in the context they're in, so a differently saturated blue might appear to look the same on a white background versus a dark one. Use it to your advantage. Opacity is also something that might help you when you work on dark UIs. For example, Google Material Design recommends using a slightly darker white, and they achieve it through opacity of white. Also, light text on a dark background can appear bolder than dark on light. That's why you may want to use a lighter font weights for darker modes. In light mode, you might use shadows to express elevation. The higher the surface gets, the wider shadow it casts. The same approach wouldn't work in a dark theme. In dark UI themes, elevated surfaces and components should be colored using overlays. The higher surface elevation, the lighter that surface becomes. Whatever adjustments you make, test your design in both light and dark appearances. As with every design trend, there are best practices to follow. Here are some additional tips to keep in mind when designing dark UIs. Use high contrast typography colors. Your text should be legible against the dark background, but don't make them too bright or you'll achieve the reverse effect. Next, keep your color scheme simple. Dark UIs work best with limited color palettes. Use white space to separate UI elements. White space can help guide the user's eye and create a sense of balance. Now that we've covered the basics, let's end this lesson by looking at some real-world examples of good dark UIs. One of my favorite examples of the dark UI is, of course, of Spotify. The dark color scheme creates a sophisticated and also modern look, and the high contrast typography and pops of green color make it easy to scan the interface. Another example is the dark UI of the messaging app, Telegram. I love the way that Twitter approached dark UI too, since they allow you to switch to a fully black mode or a dark blue one. In conclusion, dark UI design is a functional and aesthetically pleasing way to create a user interface. When designing a dark UI, keep in mind that readability, consistency, and accessibility are all important. Thank you for following along, Supercharger. See you in the next video.